Hey team, welcome to Benchmarked. Thank you for joining us today. Coach Mess here, along with my co-host, Coach LaRock. Today, we are excited to have a very special guest with us. I'm going to turn it over to Coach LaRock to handle the introduction for this one.
Thanks, Mess. Today, we're going to have with us Windsor native, Stubby Clapp. Played collegiate baseball in Texas at both Paris Junior College and Texas Tech. Had a professional career, including St. Louis Cardinals. He's an Olympian, Pan Am Games gold medalist. Was with the Houston Astros, Toronto Blue Jays, and St. Louis Cardinals at the minor league level. 2017, 2018 PCL Manager of the Year, and then called up to the St. Louis Cardinals in 2019. But most importantly, his famous wife, Chastity, who's a TikTok star. Please have a look at that online. And his two sons, Cooper and Cannon, as well as his daughter, Crosby, which is probably his pride of everything. Besides all these accomplishments, I think family is the most important thing. Stubby, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Family's the most important thing. Like that's one of the things that I've always kind of taken when it comes to making decisions about career choices and stuff that's going on. I always think of the initials FF, and that's family first, and then you kind of go from there. But yeah, well, thanks for having me on, and look forward to having a discussion.
I remember we spoke, I can't remember how many years ago. I think you were still at the Blue Jays at the time, maybe New Hampshire. And in the summer, the kids would come up and see you in New Hampshire. And that's kind of most of the time you get with the kids was during the summer. And I remember how difficult, it was awesome when you had the kids, but it was difficult at the same time when they had to go back. And it's funny for some of us that kind of look at a professional career, but I got to see a little bit behind the curtain just through you a little bit in that regard from a coaching perspective, not necessarily from a playing perspective. The sacrifices that are made, and then people just kind of don't realize that, specifically on your family.
Yeah, it's not as glorious as it looks on the outside. There's a lot of sacrifice made with my wife and my kids. My wife kind of runs the home by herself. She's a single mom for 9 months out of the year, and then obviously the kids sacrifice the time away from dad. And so when those opportunities, they get to come up in the summer, those are special opportunities, and we try and spend as much time with them when they're there. And throughout the baseball industry, that's an understood way of life. And when families are there, everybody understands that that's family first.
Love it. I'm going to rewind a little. We're going to go back in time. Mark and I, being health and physical education teachers in the high school system here in Ontario, I'm going to rewind a little bit. Which high school did you go to in Windsor?
I went to Kennedy Collegiate High School for the first 4 years, and then I did my OAC year at Riverside.
So those who are not familiar with OAC, because it's not a thing anymore, that's kind of our grade 13 at the time, which is, I think, should have stayed in the system, but that's a whole other episode for another time. So grade 13, for some of you guys who are not aware, was there almost a prep, Mark, would you say, for college, university?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a great way to describe it. And I love doing the OAC, and you could get those credits, and it was a big deal, and it was kind of you're punching your ticket to getting to universities in Canada.
Yeah,
or at least in Ontario.
Yeah, and then right now kids are like 16, 17 heading to college, university, no idea what they want to take and do. It's a tough one. Anyways, thanks for mentioning the OAC. It kind of opens up some other things. Did you have any teachers, Stubby, at the time in high school that kind of had some positive influences on you? Sorry.
Yeah, I had a couple different teachers. I enjoyed my PE teacher was David Pels, and he was the head of the swim team. And at Kennedy, it was penciled in every year that they were going to win the provincials. I mean, his knack for coaching kids and getting the best out of them, in the classroom and in their sports was really good. And then I had another guy, Chris McCaffrey. He was my English teacher at one point, and he was close with my dad. And so he always made sure that I was doing the right things at the right times and making sure I had my nose clean, and to make sure, that I had the ability to be able to get a scholarship if I wanted to. Young and in high school, you didn't always know what direction you were going to go. And that's where, honestly, that's where the OACs kind of helped me out, because I didn't know if I was going to play baseball or hockey. I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time, and that extra year of going to OACs gave me another year of playing junior hockey, gave me another year to mature as That's my dog wanting out right now. Their own doorbell. That's what gives me an opportunity to mature another year before I actually, left home and went to the Academy de Baseball Canada in Montreal.
It was fun. And I was saying to you, as we were warming up the show, I had a chance to play against you and be at some of the same national team tryouts as you and watch you. And I remember my dad saying, you want to be a ball player, watch this guy. And I remember watching you take ground balls. I remember watching you run the 60. I remember watching you hit. And I was just like, everything you did it with a purpose. And I think that was something that I took away as a young ball player that reminded me of, this is what it is. And to me, you were at that age, you were a Canadian baseball icon, and just the presence that you had on the field was outstanding. Now, how did you find the transition? Because you had a great career as a player, and now you've got a very extensive career as a coach. How did you find the transition from playing to coaching?
First of all, thank you for the compliments. Checks in the mail. I don't know if they're going to check it for COVID before you get to open. But no, thank you for that. And the transition from playing to coaching, it wasn't terribly hard, but it wasn't easy. I remember the first time I picked up my head to hit ground balls, to somebody in the infield, and it was my roommate, Danny Clausen, and another great Canadian. And I looked up and I'm like, he's still playing. Why am I not still playing? Why am I having to make the transition to coaching now? And so there was some self-doubt there early on. Like, should I still be playing? Should I be coaching? Was it time to really hang up the cleats? And there were some indicators, after playing 2 years of independent ball, and doing everything I possibly could numbers wise, to get another chance at organizational ball, and just didn't get the invite. So that was the indicator to me, like, you know what, if I've done everything I can and got all the accolades that I should, in order to get noticed to get another shot, and I'm still not getting noticed, then it's time to hang up the cleats. And that's when I took the opportunity to make some phone calls and some emails and send out, the notice that I was ready to switch over to coaching. And I was lucky enough to get the opportunity from Houston. And that was, like I said, that was the time when I first picked up the ball and I went to hit a ground ball, and I'm hitting a ground ball to Clausen. And I was like, man. So it was a learning curve. You have to take everything that you do as a player, and now you're trying to flip it over.
Go ahead. If you got to let your dogs out, go for it.
Do what you got to do. I don't even do the editing. I'm sitting there thinking, like, how's Mark going to deal with this?
It's okay. It doesn't matter. It's all good. Hey, you would just let it roll. This is the real world, man.
Yeah, I try not to let her out too much because she takes off. She's the only one.
No.
Fence. So she'll take off through that. We've got some iron gates at the front, and she takes off and just goes and roams. And I'm just like, my dog. That's my daughter's dog. So if she goes missing, I'm in trouble.
We'll put out an APB on the podcast. Has anybody seen the Clapp family dog?
That's crazy. And my wife goes nuts over it. She's just like, that dog gets lost. I'm like, baby, we live out in the country. Nope, I'm going to steal a dog.
Except the coyotes, but I won't say that. I won't say not the coyotes.
They're there at night. They are like, if we sleep with the window open on nice nights, and they're here.
Yeah.
Close. I think we've had cats go missing. But anyways, back to the coaching thing, back to the coaching part, making the transition. It was the hardest part was actually taking the information that you knew as a player when you're in the moment and playing the game, and you're analyzing situations and you're making those decisions as you're playing. And now you're having to take that information and think ahead for somebody else and help them understand that information. So I think the whole thinking ahead part and anticipating what's going to happen as a coach, and trying to remember every possible situation to help prepare the player, whether it's on defense, whether it's hitting, whether it's, catching, or whether you're looking at, situational awareness and stuff like that. That took a while for me to do. You know, in the first 3 years I did hitting, for example, like I could find the problem easy. I could see what was going on, but it took me about a good 3 years of being in the cage every day with the hitters. And then especially during spring training, that was the most important time for me because there was other hitting coaches there and our hitting coordinator there. And we were all hands on at that time. It was those spring trainings where I really felt like I got that much more better because I had other guys to bounce stuff off of and understand what the root of the problem was, not just diagnosing the problem, but understanding what the root of the problem was, and then help the players fix it from there. And it took me a good 3 years, I feel like, where I actually got comfortable diagnosing the root and then having good drills and ideas and multiple ways of helping somebody fix what they're trying to fix.
When you say root, do you mean, you know, I don't know, man, whatever technique it's not applying, it comes from something physically that there's limitations physically, there's mental blocks. Is it that's where the root is, not necessarily the end product?
Exactly. So like, just say somebody's flying open, right? Just say somebody's flying open with their front side. That's great. That's easy to see usually, right? It's you usually see the front shoulder going quick or something like that. But if you look down at the feet, like how are the feet planting, you know, at the point of contact? Are they planting square? Are they planting open? Are they able to keep a firm front side? You know, that's the physical aspect. But then I like how you mentioned the mental part of it. It's like, you have to ask these guys, what are you thinking right now? Because if they're thinking that they're worried about hitting an inside fastball, well, maybe that's the root of the problem, because they're trying to cheat to get to that pitch and they're opening up the whole outside part of the plate because they're mentally worried about what they're going to see. So like, those are the roots that we're talking about, and being able to understand how guys think, if they're a negative thinker, if they're a positive thinker, and especially like when it comes to teaching them how to do something or get them to recognize something, like, are they good learners through listening? Are they good learners through visual, meaning like demonstration, or do they need video? Some guys are good learners through just drills. Like, you give them a drill to feel something, you know, and then they feel it, and then they can apply that immediately to their swings or whatever it may be, fielding or whatever. So it's like understanding how guys learn is also a big aspect of, you know, trying to get guys to the next level.
It's like communication. Have you ever really had any athletes who haven't been open to or being receptive to the coaching and the advice that you've been giving them, and how did you work through that?
Absolutely. I mean, especially the higher you get in levels. I mean, the higher the level you get, the more guys the better guys know themselves. Sometimes the more they get locked in at what they think is good for them. And so it takes it, right? And you don't always build trust right on the field. You build trust in the clubhouse, you build trust out at lunch, you build trust at dinner, you know, you build trust over a phone call or several phone calls, consistent phone calls or communication. That's where you build the trust, and then it goes from there. Like, then now, you know, once you have their ear and you can communicate on several different topics, you find something similar that you both agree on, or you find something similar that you both like, whether, like, I mean, I've gone as far as, you know, studying video games so I can talk with guys about video games. Like, I hate video games. Like, I truly do. And I'll call my sons up and say, hey, what about I think it was what was the first game, like Fortnite or something like that, way back, like 6 years ago when it first came out. Like, I didn't know what it was, but I knew these guys were playing, and I knew my sons were playing Fortnite with these guys online. So like, I explained the game to me, like, tell me about the game. What's it work? How's it work? So like, the next day, go in the clubhouse and, you know, you can talk something other than baseball, you know, and that starts to build a relationship that, number one, they realize that you care beyond them besides the results on the field. And that goes a huge way. And that only builds trust and relationships, but that's going to start building culture in the clubhouse.
Maybe not one of the most important things you've done for yourself and to become a better coach, but I think one of the top things anyways is learning Spanish, correct?
Yeah, my Spanglish.
Why?
Spanglish. I learned it all in the cage. You know, I studied Rosetta Stone for a good month and a half for probably 5 to 6 out of 7 nights, one spring training. And I did it religiously and I was on it. And every day I'd go in the cage and I would try and spit something new out with the guys. And they would look at me like, no, that's not how you say
it. They must have been at least impressed that you were trying.
Yeah. And they love that. Right. And I felt at times that like it was going to be easier for me to learn Spanish than it was for some of the guys to learn English, just because of their background themselves and what kind of education they might have not had or had in their countries and not had those opportunities. So I felt like that was my opportunity to be able to learn to help them.
But that's the thing, I think, and our big theme, our 3 C's, our 3 E's, and our 3 P's, leadership is the big part. And I don't think you did it say, hey, this is going to make me a better leader, but it definitely made you a better communicator and probably broke some barriers between you and a lot of the players. But why did you decide like this is what's going to make it better for everyone? Because you living in Tennessee, where it is, the Spanish, I don't think necessarily is going to help you. I could be wrong, but no, why did you? Yeah, but why did you decide to go that path? Because you knew it was going to make other people better, but I don't think everyone goes to that extent. So why did you do it?
Good question. And this is the long and short of why I got into coaching, because I wanted more players to have more opportunities, better opportunities, and go farther than I ever did in my career.
Growth mindset.
That's just I wanted to give somebody else a better shot, whether it's learning how to communicate, whether it's learning how to hit, and for me, like I think about the communication part of it between me and the players, but I thought about the communication part where those kids had to go out into a completely strange country and try and go to McDonald's and order a cheeseburger. You know, like I try to think about that stuff. And for me, it was important for me that those guys had just as good a life out in public as they do at the baseball field.
Amazing. Now, Stubby, on that, as an extension of that, you've seen every level of professional sports as a player and as a coach. In your opinion, what's the greatest separation from the people that just kind of hang out in the minors and the people that make it to the pros and the people that stay in the pros? What's the difference? Can you label a couple of things that really separates people from making it and staying?
Preparation is number one. Preparing what you're going to do for that day for practice, from preparing to what you're going to do in the game and what you're studying in the game, and especially at this big league level, it's a whole different bag of apples when it comes to preparation. The amount of information that's available is mind-boggling. So not only knowing how to prepare, but also knowing what information is going to help you. And then taking what you're preparing for and being intentional about what you're actually doing. It's great if you prepare your day and you know you're going to go work on base running, you're going to go work on jumps, whatever it may be, if you're a base stealer. But are you intentional while you're out there at looking for tales on pitchers? Are you intentional about feeling the push off on your left foot? Are you intentional about how your feet are setting up when you're getting that lead? Are you intentional about running in a straight line? Or are you just out there getting a couple of jumps, 3-4 jumps, okay, my legs are loose, and move on? Like that's the difference between a lot of guys. And at the big league level, I mean, you have to be intentional about what you're going to use as far as information. Because if you try and use everything all at once, you will get mentally bogged down. And I'll use Tommy Edman as an example. Like when he first came to the big leagues, that was one of the first things we talked about. Like, just sat him down and said, okay, you're going to be coming off the bench. Here's what I think you need to understand coming off the bench because you've never done it before. Okay, here's my ideas. I want you to gather your ideas and then go and sit with Chad, our video guy, and get with your hitting coaches, see what their ideas are, and then simplify all that stuff that you can handle. And then as you get better at it, then you can add those pieces back in. So being intentional about what you're preparing for to be able to compete. And then, we see, a guy like that gets his opportunity and wins a Gold Glove because he did it at the very beginning. He was very intentional on how he prepared for each day.
Amazing. That's excellent.
And you've been part of the Cardinals now for, I don't know, man, I don't know how many years in a row now Gold Gloves have been. So you lost your second baseman, Wong, correct? 2 years ago. Yeah. Produce another guy, the Gold Gloves, not that they just happened, but what do you think it is is it the intent? Is that what it comes back to? Like, how come the organization just keeps producing Gold Glovers?
Well, number one, we got good athletes. I'll just throw that out there. We have really good athletes on the infield, and when you have good athletes.
Sorry, I gotta cut you off there for a second. So does every other major league team, Stubby.
Okay, and I'm gonna give you the next part. Okay. You have good athletes, right? But you have athletes that are intentional about their work and what they're working on. And we have some good coaches with Jose Oquendo does a really good job down in the minor leagues for us now. He's kind of heading that up, and he's done a really good job at preparing some of these younger kids on what they're going to face in the big leagues and how to be ready for that stuff. And then it's intentional on their work every day. We go down. We break down video every night, the good, the bad, the ugly. And when we do that, when we break down the good stuff, it's because we're trying to see, okay, what's working. When we break down the bad stuff, all right, what did we miss that didn't work? And, there's a lot of stuff that you can look at that you have no idea actually affects what you're doing and what your performance is.
Now, I guess as a Canadian, my question is, we were all underdogs in terms of the baseball world coming out of Canada. Like before us, there weren't very many. Like Larry Walker is the biggest name. People think about it, and that's who they think about when they talk about Canadian baseball players. So is there an underdog that you just root for in the organization that you just love seeing succeed? Or is there somebody that you're just like in the background, like, come on, let's get it?
I love them all. I love all my guys. We're blessed. Listen, we're blessed with the Cardinals. We have really good human beings. They're good athletes, but they're really good human beings. So I want every one of them to get, $1 billion contract and be able to be set for their life. Like we are absolutely blessed with the Cardinals, with the type of players that we have when it comes to, human beings on and off the field.
Now, is that designed by intent, as in if they're going to sign a free agent, if you are going to drafting maybe a little different, but example, sign a free agent.
Yeah,
does he have to fit the Cardinal way or the Cardinal mode?
I would have to defer that actual response to like the front office type guys, because I don't get a choice in who we sign for free agents or anything like that. And I'm okay with that. It's above my pay grade. But it seems very relevant that, you have to, I'm not gonna say they have to fit a mold, because sometimes you need someone to wrinkle the mold a little bit, it reminds me of a book, $1 Million Coach, that I read. Yeah, I can't give you a solid answer on that, but it just seems that it does.
Yeah.
So based on that, like you've been in a lot of locker rooms as a player and as a coach and so on. Leadership plays a big role in successful teams and successful individuals. How do you build that culture? How do you build that? Like, does the leadership build the culture? Are you guys kind of the older players kind of help formulate that culture? What is it that you see makes a good locker room, makes a good team culture? Does it come from all parts? And what are some of the things that can work against a good culture in a Major League Baseball team?
That's a great question. The first thing that I'm going to think of is, if you want a good culture, you got to collaborate. And that starts from the coaching staff to the players. So when we're doing things and we're trying to think about like how we're going to go about our day, how we're going to go about our week, what's our process look like, it's important that we include the players in those decisions. And when those players are included in those decisions, number one, they feel like they have input in what's going on what's going on with our team. And I think when they feel like that, they're included, they feel that, number one, they feel like they have a say-so. That gives them importance and value beyond just performing on the field. And when you have somebody that feels valued beyond just a performance, I think that shines. And then they begin to make other people feel valued. And when people feel valued, they want to be a part of something, right? And that's when you see teams, you see, small groups of people band together and start to go on a mission, all pointed in the right direction.
I'm gonna circle back from the beginning. I was just holding on to this, but I really got to get back to it. You said your dad had a friend who was your English teacher back in high school, and he kind of oversaw, make sure, you're kind of heading the right direction, because high school is a tough time, let's say, for some adolescents at the time. How do you think that, and I come back to your reflection of the 5 people you hang out with the most, but if you looked back at that guidance or that situation, how did that help you in a way? Did you feel like, give me some room to breathe, or how did that help mold you a little bit?
Number one, it held me accountable of what I did at school, plain and simple, because I never wanted to embarrass my dad or my mom. That was just something. I love my parents so much that I always try to think about my actions. Like when you have those split second decisions, like, hey, you gotta get a buddy, hey, you want to go do this? You want to go do that? And it doesn't seem like a good idea right away. There's always that split second time of frame where you're like, all right, is this going to embarrass my mom or dad if I get caught? Is this embarrass mom or dad if it gets put in the newspaper? Or is it going to embarrass mom? Like that was always my first thing. And so having Chris McCaffrey there was like, I always had, okay, if Chris sees this, I know it'll get back to my dad, and it's not that I was just a terrible kid, but there's always, as an adolescent, there's always those challenging times where, someone walks up to you in the hallway, hey man, you want to try this? And you're like, nah, I'm good. Even if you feel that itch, yeah, that sounds like fun. Like, let's try something crazy. But for me, it always held me accountable because I knew it would get back to my parents. And I never wanted to embarrass my parents.
So let's stay on the time machine theme. So let's travel back in time, and you could talk to Stubby, the 20-year-old player at Texas Tech, and what would you say to him? And then the second part of that question, if you can go back to, I can't remember how old you were when you started coaching, but your first version of yourself when you were coaching, what advice would you give yourself as a player, a NCAA baseball player? And then what advice would you give yourself as a new coach in the league?
As a player, I would have gave myself more grace to fail. I didn't understand failure was a good thing early on in my career. Part of myself, I was I would get very disappointed and frustrated if I didn't perform up to the levels that I thought I should be performing up to. And I didn't give myself that grace. And that's something that I consistently talk to about athletes right now. And not that, hey, you strike out, oh well, and you flip your bat and you make a kind of a mockery of it. No, it's just understanding like how hard this game is, how hard sports is, to perform at high levels. And so that's the first advice I would have given myself back then, was like, it's okay to fail as long as you learn from it. Now, going back as a coach, I think one of the best lessons I learned early on that definitely affects me today and will for the rest of my coaching career is that, like, if you've got something on your mind that you want to address a player about, doing something the way you like it done, and it's really itching at you. Number one, don't do it in the heat of the moment. Okay. Always have a calm head. So the advice was, if it still bothers you the next morning, so go home, sleep on it. If it still bothers you the next morning, then you take time to think about how you want the conversation to go in a calm manner. Think about the result that you want to have out of the conversation, and think about how you want that athlete to take the information before you talk to them, and then go talk to them. And that was given to me probably about my third year of coaching. And it came out of a situation that happened, actually. A gentleman tried to bunt when we were down like 6 or 7 runs. And obviously, to me, old school thought, like, that's a no-no, you don't do that. And I jumped his tail right away in the heat of the moment, and he barked back at me. And I backed off right there because I didn't want it to escalate on the bench. But then my manager pulled me aside. He's like, "Hey, listen," he goes, "I get it. I understand. You had the right thought process and this and that." He goes, "But there's a better way to do this." And I was like, "All right, well, give it to me." And that was the information that he gave me.
Was it almost at the time, I'm just trying to summarize for myself because I'm trying to use your experiences to learn from myself. At the time, I already know I'm off a little bit here, but it was more about, I'm going to get this off my chest because it feels better for me, but not really thinking how it feels for the person on the other end. And now you're more cognizant of what's going on the other end, not so much for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like when he did it, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that he did it. I was embarrassed that he tried to bunt. I think it was like the 7th or 8th inning, and we're down 6 runs. Like, that's one of those unwritten rules. Like, from the bat, game's over. And I was embarrassed that he did it. I think probably because I didn't give him the information. So I was more, and so, like, I jumped his tail right there to show the other team, like, like, hey, we don't play baseball like this.
We've said in our show before, we've said praise in public and discipline in private.
Yes, I like that. That's a great little acronym or thought process to go by. And that's 100% the way I do it now. So, like, if I have something that I want to address, it's always a conversation, and it's always a calm conversation now. And that part of being calm took me a lot of time to learn, not only as a player, but as a coach, because I was so intense as a player.
Sounds like somebody else I know on this show.
Yeah. All of the above.
So do you find that being a leader in sports today is more challenging than it was 20 years ago? Has things changed since you've entered the league? Do you have to approach people differently? How do you see that evolution?
I think the evolution has changed in the way that kids learn and adapt, I think, and take information. Back in the day, someone could jump my tail, call me several different names, and tell me that I'll never make it. And my attitude would be like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you." Now you do that, and they call an agent. They call an agent, and you're getting a phone call from the agent. My player didn't like this, that. So it's definitely a cognizant effort to make sure that you address people in the right way. And frankly, I'm not saying that that's wrong, because I think it's right. We just didn't know any better as players back then. Like, there's some things that happened to me as an athlete that I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have been a little bit older, I probably would have knocked this guy out. If I'd have been a little bigger, the way he dressed me, because it's not right. I think it comes down to a human element. I think there's a right way to talk to people, whether they're athletes in the heat of the moment, or whether it's your spouse, or whether it's your boss. And I think everybody deserves an opinion. Everybody deserves a rebuttal to that opinion, and it's a conversation instead of a you do as I say, not as I do.
Deep. deep.
Deep cuts with Stubby Clapp. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, do you parent the same way you coach? Or is it a different Stubby at home than it is in the clubhouse?
Yeah, I know. I do parent the way I coach, and I don't know if I don't know if my boys like it.
He's gonna call his agent.
But I'm very honest with my boys. You know, unfortunately for them, it's my industry, right? I'm paid to evaluate talent every single day. And so when it comes to them playing baseball, I'm honest with them, and I don't necessarily I don't get real crazy about the techniques and the results. I'm very adamant about effort level and how you treat your teammates. And to me, that's the part that gets me the most, is if I see bad body language, if I see that you're not leading on the field by example, that's when there's usually conversation. And that's probably where I think I help them the most, because I try to keep that in perspective for them.
You keep hitting on a lot of our 9 elements. Like you've already talked about communication, you've talked about prepare. Now you've just mentioned effort. I want to jump back onto that. We talk about effort. If we're looking at, sometimes we put things to scale from 0 to 10 on a scale, and we talk about no 7s, because for us, 7s is like that gray. Everyone's going to rate themselves a 7 because it's a gray area. You're either a 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're 8, 9, 10. So in regards to effort, you talked about that's more important than, like you said, the mechanics need to be perfect. The swing, whatever the case may be. What's your thinking? Would you scale it every day after you're done a session or a practice? What am I trying to use the word here? I'm trying to
grade out my day's effort.
Yeah, grade it, diary, wherever the case may be, jot down some notes afterwards about effort, because it's a controllable, right? That's one thing literally you can't control is your effort.
Yeah, that's it, right? It doesn't take talent to have effort. That's it, plain and simple. That's probably one of the best quotes that I've ever read. It doesn't take talent to have effort. And you're not going to be perfect every day mechanically. You're not going to be perfect every day mental process, but you can be perfect every day given the effort that you have. Effort will beat talent that doesn't work. Plain and simple. You could be the best hitter in the world, but if you're not going to give the effort to be the best hitter that you are, I can take several guys that aren't as talented, that are going to have effort, that are going to grind out ABs, that are going to jump in front of every ground ball, and I'm going to beat you every time. So for me, effort is one of the top things.
Have you ever been frustrated with a professional athlete that's come through you and had amazing talent, but just wouldn't put that effort in, put the time in? And what happened to that athlete?
Absolutely.
What happened, and how can you approach it? Those young coaches run into these athletes all the time. We just if you can give us some advice on how do you deal with it?
So for example, running to first base. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, and we see it every day in the big leagues right now. But this one happened to happen in AAA, and it was one of our big players, and he'd hit a blazing fly ball 500 feet in the air, was barely touching first base when that ball hit the glove. So it happened twice. Gave him the benefit of the doubt. The third time it happened, just approached him real quietly on the bench and just put my hands on his knees and just kind of whispered in his ears. And I just asked him, I said, do you know how far 90 feet is? And he said, yes, sir. And I said, I appreciate it if you would get around 90 feet so you can be on second base if the ball drops, please. And that was the conversation. That's exactly about as excited as I got. And it got better for about 2 days. And then it started, out of habit, he started doing it again. And I just made the phone call, called the necessary people and said, hey, this gentleman's not going to be playing for the next 2 days. Why? I was like, because the lack of effort, he's showing something to other players on his team that is not warranted in our organization. And, they're like, okay, go ahead, do it. And the third day that he sat, he finally came to my office, and I just said, hey, listen, I said, I'm not going to remind you consistently about effort. And I gave you 2 graces. I asked you the third time, you got a little bit better, but then you fell back into your habits. You need to create a new habit. And that's getting around first base so that if the ball drops, you're on second base. So I'm not asking you to be on third. That's not the kind of player you are. But I'm asking you to be on second base if the ball drops. And he said, okay.
One of those things that you can control that 90 feet. You know,
Yeah.
you can control that 90 feet, that effort that you give in that.
So I'm going to jump to another one here, which is emotion, because you're talking about the emotion you gave and the level of emotion you gave when speaking to that player about that incident. But we use also event plus response equals outcome. That's one thing we use in regards to how we handle things. And the other one, we talk about signal lights. You know, when things are going well, that's a green. Yellow when things are starting to slip. And then red is, you know, we're kind of out of control. I might have booted 1 or 2 balls. You know, I'm falling behind hitters on a consistent level. I'm 0 for 3. How have you taught either yourself, how you dealing with that? Either you could, you know, from a business perspective, how are you doing it at your facility? How are you doing it with your teams? You're helping out with a high school team right now, you said. On whatever level you want to address that, but event plus response equals outcome. Let's deal with that one first.
That's a great question right now too, because I had a dad come up to me in the academy 2 days ago, and I was watching his daughter was working out with softball, and she was working on her stuff, and him and I got to talking, and he asked me if I did lessons and stuff like that. I said, yeah, I said I do lessons. And he said, well, would you work with softball? I said, absolutely. I said, I work with any athlete. And I said, what do you see wrong with your daughter's hitting or fielding, or what do you want me to work on? He says, well, and he points to his head, like her thinking. And I was like, okay, I can do that right now. I've got 10 minutes. I can have a conversation with this young lady and just talk a little shop. And so long story short, he went to put the balls away, and I called her over, and I asked her name, and I said, hi, I introduced myself, and I said, how do you feel when you don't do something right? And she goes, I get frustrated. I said, why are you frustrated? And she says, well, I feel like I let people down. I said, you know what? I said, that is awesome. I said, that's a true feeling. And I said, that's a great thing to have, because number one, that tells me that you care about what you're doing, and you care about how it affects your team. So you're not thinking about yourself. And I said, so that's huge. I said, that's important. And I said, that's a true emotion. It exists, but I also want you to know that it's okay to fail. And she kind of looked at me like real perplexed. And I said, it's okay to fail. I asked her, I said, what's a good batting average in softball? And she kind of like, hemmed and hawed, and she kind of like whimpered a little bit. And she's like, 300? And I said, yeah. I said, think about it. I said, if you hit 300, you're really good. I said, so how many times did you just fail out of 1,000 times? And she goes, 700. I said, yeah. I said, welcome to hitting a baseball or softball. I said, it's really hard. I said, it's okay to fail. I said, as long as you learn from it, I said, you're even better than the last rep that you had. And you could see like it was almost like a response of like a sigh of relief, that I gave her the opportunity to fail, and let her know that it's okay, that nobody's going to chastise her, and nobody's going to tell her she sucks, and nobody's going to sit her on the bench because she didn't hit a ball the right way. And so it was funny. And I kind of watched her right before she left. I said, for the rest of your time that you're working with Dad today, I want you to smile and have fun. And I said, if you hit a ball, I want you to take your shoulders, shrug your shoulders, and say, oh, well, and just make the adjustment for the next pitch. And when she walked away, she had a little bit more hop to her gallop. And it was just like, she walked away like, kind of like, it's okay to fail. It's a good thing. And I did some other things. I explained the t-shirt to her that I wore that when I wear it, what it means to me. And it's a failure success t-shirt. And it just kind of gave her like that feeling like, hey, it's okay to fail. Like that's how we become good. We become good from failure, because if everybody woke up out of bed and was perfect, this place would be boring. One second.
Okay, so we talked about, because Mark will be able to edit some of this stuff out. So we talked about this young lady, failure. I just wanted to be able to build off that a bit at the same time with failure. Just try to.
I guess to explain the t-shirt, there's a t-shirt I got from Oh My. You know what Oh My is? I would hustle my yesterday. Oh, it's a Canadian t-shirt company, and follow them on Twitter and stuff like that or whatever. And it's the failure is in gray and it's chopped up on the top. And then the success is right underneath it in white. And basically the thought process is all your failures blur into success. And so it's like I wear that t-shirt constantly to remind me, number one, I'm going to fail at something. I fail every day. I fail every day. Like if you listen to my wife, or we listen to we fail at life miserably, right? But somehow I'm still here and I'm still kicking. So there's got to be some kind of success. And so like I take that thought process to when I go to work, and I try and take that thought process when I'm teaching the kids whatever it is for the day. And like that's one of the first things. Like I've had several new lessons this year. And that's one of the first things that I introduced to them when before we even start. I'm like, hey, listen, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. And if you don't do it right, it's okay. And if you don't know the answer when I'm asking you questions, it's okay. You know, I don't know. I don't understand. I've never heard that. Some other guy told me never to do this. Like those are all perfect answers. Like they're trying to give them the availability to be vulnerable at failing, being vulnerable at the information they don't know, being vulnerable at understanding emotions and letting that feeling of embarrassment, you know, letting them know it's okay. Because when they get to that point, they're going to try more things. They're going to experiment with more stuff, and then you never know what they really can do.
Mark and I took a course, it was like 6 weeks. Mark, I can't remember. And the course is about how to ask better questions, like how to ask. It's ask more, tell less. And it was just a certain book before. Now it's ask more, tell less for coaches. And man, mind blowing. I tried it with my own kids. I've tried it with kids in my classes, some of my players. And like you said, for lessons or communication, because you're avoiding the yes, no responses. Like, why did you do this? I don't know. Right now it's questions like quality questions, like how, and you're really digging deep. And I've been blown away by some of the responses I would get, where I'd get these short one-word answers. And now I'm getting at least ideas of what they're thinking. And their progress has been a lot better. Mine personally has been better just by simply asking better questions. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it's when you ask questions, number one, you hear the response, you hear the conviction in their response, and then you hear the type of information that comes out of the response. It gives you a better idea as a coach of where they're at understanding the information, where they're at with their confidence level, where they're at on actually understanding how to execute whatever we're trying to get them to do.
Stubby, on that, sounds like you got so many great things going on. Can I ask you how you measure success for yourself and others? Like what would be your measurement of success?
I get to wake up every morning. that's the, like, I try to keep it simple. Like that's the short end of it. As a coach, how do I measure success?
Let me help you, Stubby, with this a little bit, okay? Just to guide you a little bit. We had this conversation on one of our podcasts amongst ourselves, and we felt at some point, maybe for myself, anyways, earlier in my career, could have been in wins and losses and championships and rings and those types of things. And then as I progressed, it became a little bit more about the process and the failures and those types of things. But it's, and I talked about myself, I call myself JG 1.0 and then JG 2.0, where But it just took me time. I think you mentioned this before too, as your coaching career, it takes time throughout to kind of learn yourself as a person a little bit more. So what my thought of success was before and what I think of success now sometimes is two different conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I think success for me, like thinking about it along those realms, is definitely watching the process and seeing kids grow. Like I think about, I've got 3 kids on the top of my head when you talk about this that walked into my academy 2 weeks ago, literally cannot take a balanced swing. And last night, this one kid was, he's 10 years old and he's almost the same size as me. Just tall, gangly, got the giraffe type balance and stuff like that. And he actually squared up balls hard enough to actually make me flinch behind an L screen. Like that was, for me, that's success, being able to watch that process and watch kids develop from step to step to step to step. And then obviously, like at the big league level, your successes are smaller because they can do more. So there might be like smaller ideas that you're trying to get somebody to understand, whether it's understanding the timing of a prep step so they get a better jump on a ball. Understanding situational awareness. So now they're lined up in the right spot. And I'm thinking shifts, like shifts are such a debacle right now when it comes to lining up for cutoffs and relays. Like they can truly get messed up if guys don't know where they're at, if they don't know where they need to be, if they don't anticipate what's going to happen prior to the pitch. Gosh. What's going to happen prior to the pitch if a ball's hitting a gap. Like those, for me, like when guys line up the correct way, that's a success. Whether we throw the guy out or not, that's something else. It's like you said, I think it's the process of them knowing exactly where they need to be. Guys teaching other guys now, veteran guys actually starting to take leadership roles and take the rookies under their arm and teaching those guys. That's a success, because that's not easy. That's not always, that's trying to get some guys to be unselfish and teach somebody else.
And you mentioned him before. Yadi Molina was an example you gave me in the past where I had made an assumption, and terrible assumption, that I don't know how many Gold Gloves, wherever it is, and maybe you take your foot off the gas, and you said that's totally the opposite. He's the person that looks for any flaw on a consistent basis, and he's just persistent. Can you talk about that a little bit? It doesn't have to be about him specifically, but that was an example I remember you gave me.
Yeah, no, that's a great example, right? So like these guys function at such a high capability now, especially mechanically, like not that they're flawless mechanically, but it's limited stuff. It's stuff that you have to like really, you need edgetronic cameras now to dictate some of the flaws. You can't see it with your naked eye anymore. And then like situational awareness, like the foot on the gas type thing is like when a ball hits the catcher's glove, and I'm thinking about Yadi right now. When a ball hits the catcher's glove, it hits his glove. He's throwing the ball back to the pitcher. When he's throwing the ball back to the pitcher, I know that he's probably watching the third base coach. He's probably watching their bench. He's probably might be looking at a runner on the base for those 15 seconds. He's scanning the field. I have this picture of him, what his mind looks like. Like I picture his mind as like a bunch of binary codes in a matrix. Like the stuff that he's able to see and do and process in such short amount of times, his mind never shuts off during the game. And that's the way these guys get better. These are the small successes these guys have, is being able to process more and more information in shorter amounts of times to make better and better decisions. Those are small successes that you don't always get to see until it happens.
And for some of us on the outside looking in, there's some high-end players, all-stars on the team you coach right now. How does that jive together? Do egos get in the way? I don't know if I'm putting you in a bad situation to answer these questions, but how does that chemistry come together with some young outfielders that are, up and coming? And then it's just got all these pieces everywhere that look awesome on the outside, but what's it look like on the inside?
It's work. It's Because it's like not everybody's best friends, and that's okay. You know, that's 100% okay. But as long as everybody's pulling on the same rope the right way, then you start to see those personalities, all those different personalities and stuff like that. They start to pull together, and it's work. It's constant. It's maintenance. You know, paying attention to what's going on. It's maintenance. Listening to guys talk. It's maintenance. You know, paying attention to any of the daily nuances of how guys are feeling, of how guys are reacting, of how guys are, if they're making comments or they're not making comments, and constantly nurturing that culture that we're all pulling on the rope the same way.
I hear you talking. I keep hearing communication. Like, I bet you if I didn't even listen to the whole show right now, it's always going to come back to, I hear you talk. I'm hearing you. I'm not listening to you. I'm hearing you now. That it's everything else. It's like how people are feeling, how they walk, how they talk, because it gives you a better idea. And I think from the beginning of the show, we talked about example hitting. And now I think you're always looking what's at the core. You're not always seeing the results. It seems like we talked about this earlier. What's at the core, and at the core is how am I feeling today? How did it go yesterday? All those types of things.
Exactly. So that's the constant. Shall go way down.
I'm leaving that shit in. This is good.
That's exactly it, right? Like, it's the process that you're talking about. It's paying attention to everything before they execute. It's paying attention to when they're trying to execute and it doesn't go the right way. Like, what's their reactions? What's their body language? What's their comments? It's paying attention to all the little nuances of the process to keep the process going in the right way to eventually get to the end result, whatever that is. And it's like, you think about it in our perspective, like the end result is a World Series. You want a World Series championship. But if I don't prepare for tomorrow morning, making sure that my early work is done and is going to potentially execute the right way, worrying about the World Series is ridiculous. I need to worry about tomorrow. I need to worry about tomorrow's early work. I need to make sure that my stuff is scheduled for my defense and make sure that everybody knows where they're going, what their responsibilities are, and what they're going to work on. So I execute that process. And if we execute that process step by step by step by step, okay, we execute that process, say for a month and a half for spring training. Then we get to the season. We get 162 games. You repeat that process day in and day out. And you're the best at executing that process of making things happen step by step by step. And when things go awry, you get them lined back up as quickly as possible. Because it's not going to be perfect every day, no matter how hard you try and do it. Something's going to happen. There's going to be a different challenge. There's going to be a different request. There's going to be a different drill that somebody wants to do. There's going to be a different, you might have, like I might have defense scheduled at 4:00 on the field. Well, the field might not be available. I'm going to have to make an adjustment. So the best at executing a process, making adjustments day by day. And at the end of those, say month and a half for spring training and 162 games, if we work consistently as a team, as a staff, as players at just doing that, the World Series will be there at the end.
Process over outcome.
Yeah. And you've been
100%.
And I can buy in that much more because you've been part of some Cardinal teams that have been third, fourth place most of the season. And all of a sudden now it happens like late July, August, and then it clicks. I don't know what happens. Things just click. And I don't know, I've watched it over the last 2-3 years where it's not like you're sitting at the top of the division, everyone's catching up. You guys have been playing catch up, which I think is harder than anything else, playing catch up. Everyone can have different philosophies on that, but it's just, and when I hear you say that, it has to be the mentality of just stay consistent, stay process oriented, stay process, and those things will happen. And I think you guys are proof in the pudding in the sense of like, it does happen, just stay with it. But doesn't that get boring? Or is it just great players love the boring stuff?
it's that's the discipline, right? That's the discipline of life, is executing what's boring, because that's what works. Everybody we can always go get a new gadget. That's exciting for a little while, but does that gadget work? We can try new drills, but does that drill work? If it does, keep it. Make that boring, right? When you make something boring, that means you're doing it right. Now, do we need stuff that's tough and challenging? Absolutely. So like that process, we're always going to evaluate, is there something better we can be doing? Is there a different drill we can be doing? Is there a different daily schedule that we can put together that's going to maybe like engage the guys better? That's a part of the process, is finding out, do we need to do something different now? Like, so that's a good question. Like, yeah, it does sound boring, but in the process, you're also questioning, okay, what can be better? Can we do something different? Can we add a different gadget to engage the guys in a different way? So when they're seeing the results, they're grabbing the information in a different way. Like, so that's a part of the boring, is actually asking, can we do something different?
Because you're paying attention again to their nonverbal or how they're feeling. And
yeah, I mean, like I think about the infield things. Like I have certain like we take infield a certain way. We do our ground balls a certain way. We do certain stuff certain ways, but it's different every day. So like we might do ground balls in a left-handed shift. One day we'll do ground balls in a right-handed shift. The next day we'll do a regular ground ball routine that we execute. That's going to be one day. So that's 3 different days of work right there, but it's different work, different situations. So I'm keeping their mind engaged in different ways. That's part of it. And then like, even I'll go to the players and I'll ask the players, hey, what can we do different? Is there something that I'm missing, or something that you guys have seen? Or is there something you do in the off season that you guys like that we could do that we don't do here? Like, and again, there's a part of building culture, right? Looking for players' information to be included so that they have input on what we're doing.
Player fed or player led instead of
Yeah.
coach fed, man. He's helping us out here.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
I'm gonna tee one more, and then I think just about a routine.
Yeah.
We're pretty much in the home stretch here, Stubby. I want to go with routines. I find routines are important. What is your daily routine? So you're at the field, or you're at work, wherever work is.
Yeah.
What's a typical routine, and what do you think of routines?
Routines are innate right now. We function through routines. Number one, I think routines are great because that's a type of it's a type of checklist, right? And so when you have checklists and routines, you have things that you're able to make sure that you're covering all your bases to make sure the day's done. So like for me, I'll go in. No, I have to rethink. You have to give me a second. I go in, and usually I'll make sure that since I'm having to redraw from the season. Oh my goodness, my dogs are absolutely killing me. You guys are killing me.
I just picture them like pushing the doorbell. That's what I picture.
Stubby's having a great time with his puppies here. I love it. I think they're doing it on purpose, Stubby. They're yanking your chain on purpose, man.
They are. They know exactly. It's funny because it's funny. I was doing an interview. I was doing an interview a while ago, and they did the same thing. It was like they knew I was on the computer and trying to get some stuff done. And normally, if I'm sitting on the couch, I'll have 3 dogs on top of me laid out on the couch.
Yeah. Hey, this is the real world. People got to know that we don't have like magical sound studios that we could make this stuff happen in. Real world stuff, kids, dogs, whatever. This is real life, man. This is good. This is rich.
This is it. This is how it works. No, but my daily routine. Well, now, ironically, because of COVID, like we're not allowed to get to the stadium whenever we want. So like you have a designated time, and when you come in, you automatically go right into your daily routine as a coach. So I'll go in, make sure that I've got everything scheduled that I need to have scheduled. Might check in with the trainers if there's anybody on rehab to see if there's somebody that needs something on the field so they can do their progressions to get better. And then obviously I'll make sure that I have all my work done on the computer, making sure I have my layouts as far as infield defense, and then make sure that I'm getting all my stuff done that I need to get done. If the manager's got any requests, if the bench coach has got any requests, if there's anything I need to tend to player wise, sometimes I'll be intentional about if I need to talk to a player about something, or if I need to do video work, might review video work that I reviewed after the game the night before, and then we will go into a coaches meeting. We'll discuss our stuff there, and then your day goes there. You start checking the boxes, meeting with players, making sure the equipment's up, making sure that your routine's done, making sure that you're getting early work done with particular players. And then you get into BP and you make sure that routine's done. And then after BP, you come back in and you check those boxes again. Make sure that if something didn't happen during BP, that you're meeting with the players to make sure that they need anything they want, or if they need anything extra, you're taking care of that. Making sure the paperwork's done, that needs to be done. As far as having stuff, set up for the players for in game. And then once you get all that, making sure that that anything between the coaches, like if there's anything that happened, the nights prior to that's been covered, and whatever you need adjusted is adjusted. And then you're within probably about a half an hour of the game, you go and close up shop, make sure you got everything ready, go over my checklist for the game, make sure I got my cards and everything like that, make sure that everybody knows if there's like lineup changes or something like that, make sure the players know that, so that when they're looking at their defensive cards, they understand where the changes are, and then you go through your checklist. I have a checklist, every inning that I go through. Checklist at first base. When a runner comes down to first base, I've got a checklist of information that I'm telling them. I've got a checklist after the pitch. Make sure I'm looking around the field and making sure that the information that I'm seeing, and I'm making sure that information gets back to the runner between pitches. And then I come back after the inning and I'm on the bench, and now I'm thinking defense. I've got a checklist of stuff before the inning starts. And then same thing, I got another checklist of stuff that I'm looking at as the game happens. And then I'm able to communicate information to the manager or the bench coach as stuff is happening, so that they can make decisions. So it's constantly checklist. If you ever read Checklist Manifesto, It's a great book.
Sounds simple, man. Thanks for
yeah. It's like, and you know what? People.
And that's the first inning.
I watch you on TV. I see you walk out in between innings on TV. I was like, oh, that's easy. I could coach first base in the big leagues. Why not? I can't wait to talk to my first base coach here. The first person I'm calling when I get off this podcast is I'm calling my first base coach, and I'm like, listen, man, you're listening to this guy's checklist.
Like it's
do you make coffee too, or what?
No, that's probably the first thing I do when I get a coffee.
Yeah, well deserved, pal. Well deserved.
I get a coffee to start my day before I flip on the computer and start going through all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, in the big leagues, like games are won and lost in such small margins that those checklists are huge, because you don't want to miss any information, because your opportunity to pass information along is like, you're talking like you get 15 seconds of time. That's it. So you got 15 seconds between pitches. So if you've got to get information passed on to the manager or the bench coach, you've got those 15 seconds. If you get information you're trying to pass on to the base runner, you've got those 15 seconds, and you got to make sure that the first baseman's not listening. It's stuff like that. Like there's so much stuff that happens that nobody gets to see, that's part of it. And that's why I love it so much, because it's that, to me, that's competition, and that's the way you win baseball games, is on the small margins right now.
So Stubby, we've asked you a lot of tough questions here. What's one of the craziest things? Like let's go off the radar here a little bit. What's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to you as either a player or as a coach that you're like, if you had to write a memoir and like chapter 1, this is it. This is the most crazy or exciting thing. What's been the most exciting thing that's ever happened to you?
For me, I'll say the Olympics, the 2004 Olympics. As a child, when I was 12 years old, I was a bat boy for the U.S. national team. When there was a tournament in Windsor, and that was when my love to actually pursue being an Olympian actually like that flourished. I always followed the Olympics as a kid. I love the Olympics, winter and summer Olympics. I used to be able to rattle off the 100 times for you and who was running them, and I used to be able to obviously follow Team Canada with hockey, and I could rattle off guys that were pole vaulting. I could rattle off guys that were javelin. So like I was an Olympic nut when I was a kid. Like I usually didn't miss events. So that's where my love for the Olympics fell in place. And I had no clue that baseball was not an Olympic sport at that time. Baseball was just something I did. I loved it. And then as I grew older, that love for baseball merged together with wanting to be an Olympian. And then in 2003, we had the opportunity to actually qualify for the 2004 Olympics. And that was probably one of the craziest, most fun times when we were qualifying for that tournament in Panama. And just the competition with those guys. And when we actually won and just qualified to go to the Olympics, like I get chills thinking about those games and thinking about the time that like when we actually qualified, it was just like, oh my God, we did it.
It's an epic moment in Canadian sports history, really.
Yeah. And it was just like, we did it. We did it. And with that group of guys that we were with, I mean, it was so much fun. And then I think the icing on the cap for me, for that situation was getting the Canadian Olympic gear when we got to the village and trying on that stuff. It started to become a little surreal. And then the most surreal moment was walking through the gates at the opening ceremonies. And you're wearing Team Canada gear and you're there with every other athlete from Canada. And you're hearing Canada chanted in Athens. And what a better place for kind of the ice, like the original place of the Olympics in Athens, Greece, and getting to go and see, all that stuff. And getting to be a part of that Olympics was probably the most rewarding, crazy jubilation of time for me, because it was a childhood dream that came true.
Love it. Love it. All right. Since you're an expert in 15-second segments, this is how we're going to Stubby. We like to give our listeners something to focus on between shows. Call it a homework assignment. Since we're teachers anyways, we always give out homework assignments. We're the only phys ed teachers in the world that give out homework assignments to our podcast listeners. But I think it would be great if you gave us something in 15 seconds. Can you think of if somebody wanted to excel at leadership, what would it be? What would your suggestion to them be? And how should they work on developing it? 15 seconds.
All right, JG, you're going to love this because you and I share books all the time. Go get the book, The Carpenter by John Gordon. The premise is to love, serve, and care. And when you get done reading that book, I think you understand, number one, how to be a better leader and how to help other people and help organizations, businesses, excel at being good at what they do. And John Gordon's got several books, but I read that one last year, right before the season, and it helped me. It gave me a different look at the way I did some things.
Awesome. Is it wrong that I'm sitting there like I'm thinking I'm on first base and Stubby's whispering that in my ear? Before the first baseman comes in.
Love, serve, and care. You're probably looking at me like, are you sure right now?
Well,
hey, you're gonna love to steal second base. You're serving your team by getting there, and you're gonna care about it when you score this next run.
JG's never stolen second base in his life, so you're not giving him any green light whatsoever. You're saying don't get picked off. Read this book.
Yeah,
I think we could get JG a base.
There we go.
with a lot of help.
Yes, I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah. Stubby, it's been awesome having you on the show. Appreciate it. It's awesome.
I've enjoyed it, guys. Great time, great questions, and great camaraderie.
Well, that does it for this episode of Benchmarked. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Keep crushing it.
That's it.